You feel pain like no other pain, and you know that in your life it's going to be very difficult to...
The microphones were live. The cameras were counting down. Prince William was only moments away from addressing the nation when his expression suddenly changed. Across the crowded event hall, standing behind a restricted barrier she was never expected to cross, was Meghan. William did not approach the lectern. He turned to his communications director, spoke 6 quiet words, and brought the entire press conference to an immediate and humiliating halt. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had entered the hall prepared to announce a youth mental health initiative with Catherine, a program designed to give young people access to help. The Royal Foundation, the charitable organization through which the couple supports public causes, had spent months preparing the announcement. Every sentence had been tested. Every guest had been cleared. That was why Meghan's presence mattered. She was not attending another public event. She was standing inside a controlled royal space where her name did not appear on the approved list. The prince felt disbelief harden into anger as he watched her speak with invited patrons meters from the press enclosure. He did not raise his voice or move toward her. Instead, he stepped back from the lectern and tightened his jaw, knowing one careless reaction could become the only story the world remembered. Catherine saw the change immediately. She reached for his arm, but he asked her to remain behind the partition until security discovered how Meghan had entered. A senior aide opened the attendance tablet and searched twice. The answer did not change. Meghan had not been invited by the foundation, and no palace security channel had cleared her arrival. William placed his prepared speech on a side table. Then he gave the order calmly. "Cancel the conference. No one goes on stage until I know who authorized this." Staff began switching off microphones while organizers exchanged looks. Meghan finally noticed him watching. Their eyes met across the room, and for one moment, neither looked away. She did not apologize. She did not retreat. Instead, she straightened her shoulders as though this collision had been expected. The future king felt the weight of that gesture. This was not confusion. This was a challenge. Security closed the main doors, but the crisis had moved beyond one unexpected guest. An aide examined Meghan's badge and found a sponsor credential carrying the signature of someone connected to William's event committee. The conference had been stopped, but his real shock was only beginning. Because Meghan had not slipped through an unguarded door. Someone with influence had deliberately opened it for her. To the cameras outside, the cancellation looked like confusion. Inside, it felt like the return of a conflict the royal family had spent years trying to contain. William saw a threat to order. Meghan saw a door that should never have been closed. Catherine feared that a public confrontation would destroy the purpose of the event. And King Charles, receiving the first urgent call, understood that one unexpected appearance could reopen every wound. William had built his public authority around discipline, preparation, and clear royal roles. Every appearance carried a purpose. Every guest was expected to follow a controlled plan. That was why Meghan's unexplained presence struck so deeply. The initiative carried his name, his reputation, and Catherine's months of work. Losing control of it in front of the world would not look like a small mistake. It would look like weakness. Meghan felt the pressure tightening around her as staff quietly moved closer. She believed her past support for one participating charity gave her a genuine reason to attend, even without a direct invitation from William or Catherine. When an organizer asked her to remain where she was, she answered calmly that she had not come to cause trouble. Then she learned the prince had cancelled the entire conference after seeing her. Her voice hardened. She asked whether her presence alone had now become an emergency. Catherine stood behind the stage curtain and listened as hundreds of guests began whispering. The princess had entered the hall expecting to speak about young people living with fear, isolation, and silent pain. Instead, She could feel another family conflict swallowing the cause. She lowered her head for a moment, saddened that suffering meant to be addressed was being replaced by suffering the royal family had never resolved. Charles received the secure call at Clarence House, his London residence used for private royal duties. The king heard Meghan's name, removed his glasses, and placed them beside him without speaking. His silence lasted so long that the aide asked whether the connection had failed. The monarch finally replied, "No public removal, no scene at the doors. Whatever had happened, she was not to be marched out before waiting cameras." William understood what that instruction meant. His father was trying to prevent humiliation, but the order left the future king trapped between confrontation and retreat. Catherine pulled him aside for less than a minute and urged him not to let anger make the next decision. He answered quietly that Meghan was no longer the only issue. Someone had given her access. Security retrieved the sponsor credential and checked its authorization code. It had been activated before dawn, hours before ordinary registration began. The deeper William looked, the less Meghan's appearance resembled an impulsive visit, and the more it seemed connected to a warning the palace had ignored weeks earlier. The confrontation had not begun at the cancelled conference. Its true beginning came 3 weeks earlier, inside a private reception room at St. James's Palace. There, away from cameras and public applause, Meghan challenged Catherine over a royal program that excluded her name. The conversation lasted only 7 minutes, but one final sentence changed everything. Meghan promised that she would not allow the institution, or William, to decide when she was permitted to be seen. Meghan had entered the closed charity reception as the private guest of an international donor linked to one of the participating organizations. St. James's Palace, a historic royal residence still used for official meetings and ceremonies, offered the controlled setting everyone expected. Yet the calm vanished when she discovered that a future Royal Foundation summit would feature charities she had once supported, while neither she nor Harry had been invited to take part. Catherine felt the tension before a word was spoken. Meghan asked to speak privately, and the two women entered a small adjoining room without aides. She wanted to know why her earlier work was still being used while her name had disappeared from the program's official history. The princess answered carefully. The summit belonged to William's current initiative and was not meant to reopen old royal partnerships. Meghan heard rejection, not explanation. She placed the printed program on the table and said, "You cannot use what I helped build and then pretend I was never there." Catherine did not raise her voice. She warned that appearing without direct agreement would create another damaging confrontation and pull attention away from the people the program was designed to help. The silence that followed carried more danger than shouting. Meghan looked at her and replied, "Then perhaps the next conversation should happen where no one can ignore it." She left moments later, calm and controlled. Catherine immediately contacted William and gave him a documented account of the exchange, including every sentence she could remember. William read the account alone that evening. He underlined Meghan's final words, closed the folder, and ordered his security team to review all future credentials. The instruction was placed inside the event file, but it covered only palace-issued invitations. It did not block passes created through approved outside sponsors. Catherine later admitted that Meghan's calmness had frightened her more than anger would have. The words did not sound impulsive, they sounded planned. The prince agreed and ordered his team to make certain no unauthorized appearance could occur. Yet someone later removed the warning page from the active security briefing. That single act allowed Meghan's sponsor credential to pass without an alert. William had tried to close every entrance, but one warning had vanished, and now he was preparing to confront the woman who had walked through the gap it left behind. There were no cameras inside the private holding room, no prepared statements, no advisors standing between them. When William entered, Meghan was waiting beside a long conference table, with the sponsor badge still pinned to her coat. He closed the door and asked one direct question. "Who brought you here?" Meghan did not answer immediately. She removed the badge, placed it between them, and told him he was asking the wrong question. William had ordered the private meeting before deciding whether the press conference could be restored. Catherine remained outside, while security guards kept organizers and journalists away. The sponsor credential, an approved pass issued through an outside event partner, appeared genuine. Meghan insisted she had not used a false name, forced her way inside, or entered through any hidden route. A registered sponsor had invited her because of her past work in youth advocacy. The prince pushed the badge back across the table. He accused her of knowingly entering a room where her presence would dominate every headline. Hundreds of young people were waiting for an announcement meant to support their future, yet one unexpected arrival had swallowed the entire cause. Meghan answered without hesitation. William had cancelled the conference, not her. He had seen her, assumed the worst, and punished everyone before asking a single question. Meghan felt anger rise, but she kept her voice controlled. The future king asked whether her warning at St. James's Palace had been a promise to force another confrontation. She looked directly at him and said she had promised only that she would not disappear because the family preferred silence. Good causes, she argued, did not become private royal property simply because her name had been removed. William's anger briefly gave way to exhaustion. He sat down, rubbed his forehead, and told her that every family disagreement became a constitutional spectacle the moment either side used a public event as leverage. Meghan softened, but she did not retreat. She said she had come because the cause mattered. He replied that good intentions did not erase consequences. The room changed when Meghan revealed that she had never contacted the sponsor. The invitation had been offered by someone who knew she had been excluded and believed William's restrictions were driven by personal resentment. The prince demanded a name. She refused until he promised her attendance would not be publicly described as a security breach. William stared at the badge between them, trapped between immediate control and the truth. Meghan finally gave him one clue. The person who authorized her pass had attended a private meeting with King Charles only 2 days earlier. The conflict was no longer confined to William and Meghan, because the trail behind her credential now appeared to lead directly toward the king's own circle. William expected to find a careless organizer or an ambitious donor behind Meghan's entry. Instead, the authorization led to Sir Jonathan Vail, a senior royal patron trusted by King Charles and appointed to protect cooperation between palace charities. His signature was not forged. His access had not been stolen. He had knowingly approved Meghan's badge, then failed to warn William. The discovery transformed an awkward appearance into a direct challenge over who controlled the monarchy's public stage. Sir Jonathan Vail held authority over outside partnerships linked to the summit, which meant he could create limited sponsor passes without seeking approval from William's private office. A royal patron is a senior figure who publicly supports charities and helps connect them with the palace. That power gave him access to the event system, but it did not give him permission to force a family encounter. William felt deeply undermined. The Royal Foundation program belonged to his team, the press conference carried his name, and his participation was the reason the announcement had drawn national attention. Charles still held influence over joint charitable work through trusted senior patrons, but the future king believed someone had used that influence to weaken his authority. He told his chief aide that canceling the event was the only power left once the guest list had been changed behind his back. Charles felt disappointment when the written explanation reached Clarence's house. The king knew the cancellation had cost several charities the attention they had waited months to receive. Yet he also understood the trap William had faced before hundreds of journalists. He read Vail's account slowly, until he reached one sentence claiming Meghan's presence might encourage reconciliation. The monarch set the page down and said quietly, that was not his decision to make. Vail admitted in the documented account that he had approved the badge after a private recorded conversation with Meghan. She had promised to attend quietly. avoid the press line, and leave before the royal speeches began. The plan failed because the conference schedule shifted by 20 minutes, placing her inside the restricted hall at the exact moment William entered. The prince called his father and asked the question directly. Had Charles known? A painful silence followed. The king said no, but admitted Vale had earlier suggested bringing Meghan into a future charity discussion. William heard the hesitation and understood how close the idea had come to approval. William ended the uncertainty. The conference would not resume that day. Vale's credential authority was removed, and every outside pass would face an independent review. Charles then delivered the warning neither man wanted to hear. Meghan was preparing to leave through the public entrance, where cameras were already waiting. William had regained control inside, but too late. Meghan's next movement would decide who looked wounded and who looked responsible. The doors opened, and every camera turned at once. Meghan emerged without making a statement, but silence did nothing to reduce the impact. Behind her, the conference stage remained dark. In front of her, journalists shouted questions about William, Catherine, security, and reconciliation. She paused only once, when someone asked whether she had caused the cancellation. For a moment, anger crossed her face. Then she continued walking, completely alone. Palace Communications released a brief notice saying the press conference had been cancelled because of an internal event management matter. The statement did not mention Meghan, and it offered no answer about whether the youth initiative would continue. That silence mattered. The conference had been created to give national attention to young people in crisis, yet the message was now buried beneath a family conflict. Guests were quietly dismissed, while participating charities were promised that William's announcement would be rearranged. The prince watched the live security feed as Meghan moved toward her vehicle. His anger began to give way to discomfort, but when an aide suggested appearing beside her to calm the story, he refused. He believed any shared appearance would look false and turn the exit into another performance. Meghan felt the weight of every shouted question. No one had formally accused her, yet every camera connected her arrival to the darkened stage behind her. She understood exactly what the photographs would suggest. She had entered, the future king had seen her, and everything had stopped. The distinction between cause and blame was already disappearing. Catherine entered William's room after the vehicle pulled away. The princess removed the unused speech card from the lectern folder and held it in silence. Then she asked whether protecting the event had truly required allowing one person to carry all the humiliation. He did not answer immediately. His silence told her the question had reached somewhere deeper than anger. The crisis sharpened within minutes. A leaked internal message reached journalists stating that William had cancelled the conference after identifying an unexpected Sussex presence inside the restricted zone. The wording came from the organizing team, proving someone was feeding the conflict directly to the press. The prince ordered his communications office to identify the source. Charles called Meghan from Clarence's house. The king heard her answer from the back of the vehicle, her voice controlled but wounded. She told him she had not expected William to welcome her, but she had expected to be treated as a person rather than an emergency. The monarch then suspended Sir Jonathan Vale from all royal charity coordination. Catherine turned back to her husband and asked for a conversation without advisors, security officers, or palace language. The public damage had begun, but behind another closed door, she was about to challenge William with the one truth none of his advisors had dared to say aloud. When the final aide left, Catherine closed the door and sat opposite William. She did not defend Meghan's decision to appear. She did not excuse the hidden credential or the warning at St. James's Palace. Instead, she asked her husband one question. Had he cancelled the conference because the event was genuinely unsafe, or because seeing Meghan had made him feel that control was slipping away? William looked toward the abandoned speech and finally answered without royal language. William admitted that the threat had not been entirely physical. Meghan's arrival had dragged years of anger, accusation, and distrust into one crowded room. The prince knew she had crossed a serious boundary by attending without direct approval, but he also knew the event had not become dangerous simply because she was there. A security operation is the system used to protect guests, control access, and respond to real risks. This crisis had become something more personal. Catherine listened without interrupting. The princess accepted that Meghan had acted deliberately, yet she believed the cancellation had turned a manageable problem into a public rejection. She told him that strength was not proved by making every unwanted person disappear. Sometimes authority meant refusing to let that person change the purpose of the room. William picked up the unused speech and read the opening line. It spoke about young people feeling unheard. The words struck him differently now. He asked whether the initiative could survive the scandal. Catherine took the pages from his hands and told him it would survive only if he returned attention to the people it had been created to help. The truth arrived before either could continue. The internal investigation identified Vale's communications assistant as the source of the leaked message. A recorded staff interview showed that the assistant had released the wording to protect Sir Jonathan by making Meghan appear solely responsible. She had not alerted photographers. She had not leaked the cancellation. Her attendance was deliberate, but the humiliation that followed had been engineered by someone else. William felt the balance shift. He had been right about the hidden credential, but wrong to let anger decide the scale of his response. The future king ordered a new press conference for the following morning. He would explain the unauthorized pass, defend the security review, and accept responsibility for canceling too quickly. Catherine asked whether he would speak to Meghan first. The prince hesitated, then made the call himself. He told her he would correct the false claim that she had created the leak. Meghan accepted that decision through the private conversation, but declined his invitation to attend again. By morning, the empty lectern would no longer represent Meghan's arrival. It would represent William's choice, and the world was ready to judge whether that choice showed weakness or leadership. By sunrise, one image dominated every screen, an empty lectern beneath the Royal Foundation emblem. The Daily Chronicle printed it across its front page beneath 4 words: "The Conference That Never Began." Outside Kensington Palace, a crowd gathered behind the barriers, divided between those praising William for defending royal boundaries and those accusing him of allowing private resentment to overpower a public duty. Then the palace announced that he would return to the microphone. William understood that the second conference would carry more weight than the first ever could. Newspapers, broadcasters, and online commentators had turned the cancellation into a test of his future reign. The Royal Foundation, the charitable organization through which he and Catherine support public causes, confirmed that the youth mental health program remained active. Its funding had not been withdrawn, and the participating charities had not been abandoned. Only the announcement had collapsed. Meghan watched the coverage privately as the same images repeated across every channel. One showed her leaving alone. Another showed the darkened stage. Supporters of the prince argued that her arrival had been designed to trap him before the cameras. Others insisted that canceling the conference had handed her presence more power than it deserved. She switched off the television before William's return began, unwilling to watch herself become the symbol of another royal fracture. Outside Kensington Palace, one moment cut through the noise. A young charity volunteer stood behind the barrier, holding a handwritten sign that read, "Please remember why we came." Broadcasters returned to it again and again. The message captured the public's exhaustion with a family conflict that had buried the voices of young people waiting for help. A senior presenter described the crisis during the morning transmission as a test of whether royal boundaries can be defended without turning family pain into public punishment. The words followed William into the hall. The prince approached the same lectern and placed both hands against it. He began by apologizing to the charities whose work had been overshadowed by his cancellation. Then he confirmed that an unauthorized credential had been issued through a valid sponsor channel. Meghan had not falsified her access, and the staff member who leaked the inflammatory message had been removed. William did not apologize for maintaining security boundaries. He made that clear. But he accepted that ending the conference had given the disruption more importance than the cause itself. His final words were not directed toward Meghan, the palace, or the press. They were directed toward the young people the initiative had been created to serve. The cameras had captured the cancellation, the confrontation, and the apology. What remained was to decide what this moment had permanently changed inside the royal family. The cancelled press conference did not end with Meghan's removal or William's victory. It ended when the future king returned to the lectern and admitted that authority without restraint could become another form of fear. Meghan had crossed a boundary by attending without direct agreement. William had deepened the crisis by allowing personal shock to silence a public cause. Neither emerged untouched. Yet for the first time, the monarchy answered conflict without pretending that only one person carried the blame. William moved quickly after the second conference. He permanently strengthened the accreditation system, the formal process used to approve who may enter an official event, so no outside sponsor could clear a politically sensitive royal guest without direct confirmation from the principal household. Sir Jonathan Vail then resigned from his coordinating role through a written statement, accepting responsibility for trying to force a private reconciliation inside a public charity event. The prince understood the deeper lesson. Leadership was not measured only by the power to cancel, exclude, or command. It was also measured by the courage to return, explain, and accept responsibility. Meghan reached a hard conclusion of her own. A valid badge had given her access, but it had not made her presence emotionally neutral. By attending without direct consent, she had knowingly carried unresolved family pain into a cause meant to help others. Catherine became the quiet center of the entire crisis. She had persuaded William to separate personal wounds from public duty, and that choice saved the initiative from permanent damage. Charles reached an equally firm decision. The king instructed both households through a recorded private briefing that no advisor, patron, or courtier could ever again create a surprise encounter in the name of healing the family. Forced reconciliation, he concluded, was not reconciliation at all. William later returned alone to the holding room where he had confronted Meghan. Her temporary badge remained sealed inside an evidence envelope. The future king looked at it for a long moment, then ordered it archived. It would not be displayed, leaked, or used as a weapon. Meghan and the prince did not reconcile, but they established one clear private rule through a documented exchange between their offices. Neither would enter the other's official events without direct written agreement. Both sides accepted the boundary. The conference that never began ultimately delivered its most important message. The crown could defend its limits, but it could no longer defend revenge. The story ended not with a slammed door, but with a completed speech, a restored charity mission, and two sides finally understanding that distance could be maintained without cruelty. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.